I hope this will be a help to you as these changes have already taken place. I want to thank each of you for joining us, especially during this busy holiday season. I know it's hard to come out and do any training during the holidays. I appreciate you taking the time to sit in on this on the latest updates from HUD. What this is, it's the Buyer Select Closing Agent Program, BSCA for short. It's now in effect in South Carolina as of last Friday, the 29th. HUD no longer will have a designated closing attorney. Up until now, they've used Battaglia Law Firm, which has done a great job for HUD, and they can still close the HUD properties just as well as any attorney in the state, but they are no longer HUD's designated closing attorney. Your buyer will have to choose their own attorney, and that attorney will handle the complete closing for HUD as of any properties that go under contract from here out. That attorney will do the entire closing, and they will be responsible for sending the funds to HUD. We've been doing this for at least 10 years. I know this is the biggest change we have seen in the HUD sales process in the last 10 years or more, and it involves changes that will affect each HUD sales and the handling of the sales contract and the earnest money funds. If you have any questions, feel free to type in the message box. I will go through the presentation first and will answer any questions towards the end. Also, I will post my email address and phone number at the end of the program as well. And again, we're just one of the listing brokers for HUD. Any of the listing brokers on any of the HUD properties will be able to help you with any questions and answers. First, I want to pull up the new addendum that you will now be necessary for each HUD contract. On your screen, this new addendum is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Buyer Select Closing Agent Addendum. This will be necessary now for every HUD contract, every offer that is accepted. On this contract is on this addendum it reads, let's see. Get this to move here. It says, for properties identified for the Buyer Select Closing Agent Program, the buyer will choose their own settlement company. The purchaser will be responsible party for any and all closing fees. Amounts listed on line 5. Now, you know line 5 of the sales contract is the seller paid closing costs. If you have an amount on that line, HUD will pay up to 3%. If there's money on that line now, it will go towards the buyer selected closing agent. Before, HUD would just pay for their own attorney and they would not pay third-party closing agent fees. Now if the amounts are available on line 5, you can use that towards your closing attorney fee. Please note line 9 of the HUD sales contract must contain the name of the buyer selected closing agent. So it will affect line 3 and line 9 of your sales contract, which we'll go over in a minute. To ensure accuracy of your document, please utilize the fillable format below. Handwritten documents will not be accepted. Yes, this addendum has to be typed. HUD will not accept it. The asset companies won't accept it if it's handwritten. So it is a fillable contract. It can be found on 04EREO.com, HUDPIMCO.com, and HomeTellosFirst.com. It'll be called the BSCA addendum. When you're filling it out, you're authorizing where the box is lit up here. You'll be authorizing the asset manager. So if it's PIMCO, Ofori, or HomeTellos, that's who you will put in the box where you're authorizing. To release a copy of the sales contract and all applicable addenda amendments for the following property to the closing agent escrow company listed on the form. Then the agent will actually fill out this top portion, this portion right here. The FHA case number, which is going to be in South Carolina, the 461- number. The property address, you put the address, the city, the state, and the zip code. Your buyer's name, whether it's 1 or 2 buyers, you're going to list them with their phone numbers. And this has to be as listed on the contract. It has to be exact, as we all know from the past with the HUD contracts. The selling broker name and the listing broker name needs to go down here with their phone numbers, and again all this needs to be typed. Then the closing agent or the buyer, the selling agent can fill this out for the closing agent, or you can send this form to the closing agent to type in their information. What they're needing this information so the asset manager knows who to contact at the closing attorney's office and where to send the copy of the sales contract to. The company name, phone number, you can mark out that phone number there. It's just the company name. It's kind of a typo they have here on the addendum, but you're going to put the name of the closing attorney, their name, their phone number. It's very important to get the contact person, the person that will be receiving the contracts. That's the person that needs to be listed on this line with their direct line. Also, if there's a secondary person and their phone number, the mailing address of this attorney, and the closing attorneys need to fill these out. Like if they have multiple locations, they will need a separate title ID per location. So if they have multiple offices, they will have a title ID for each individual address. Another thing too, the attorneys have been asking, can we fill this out ahead of time? Can we get a title ID and be all set with HUD before our first closing? And HUD, the people at the asset companies, they say no, that you have to wait until your first closing under the BSCA program before you can apply for a title ID. So it's nothing you can do ahead of time. You're putting your mailing address, city, state, zip of the closing attorney, their phone number, and really, really important, the email address. And this is, again, the person that will be receiving the contract. Selling agents, it's good to verify this email address, make sure that it is correct, because this is where the contract and all the contact information will be going to. Has this closing escrow company previously registered with HUD? If this is your first BSCA contract, it'll be no. If you've already, once a couple of months have gone and you've closed a BSCA contract, then your answer here will be yes, that you're already registered, and you'll put your title ID number in the next box there. But the first time you won't have a title ID number, you're actually applying for it on this form. If no, attach a copy of the closing escrow company's state license, evidence of errors and omissions insurance, and evidence of appropriate fidelity bonding currently in place. So for South Carolina, you're going to need a copy of your license and evidence of errors and omissions insurance. The purchaser will sign, the selling agent will sign with the dates, and at the bottom, the attorney will sign date. On this form, it has to be typed, but the signatures do not have to be original. So you don't have to have original signatures on this, it would be kind of hard to get that if you're having two people sign it in two different locations. That's pretty much a good overview of the actual addendum you'll be filling out with each package. Just remember that it does need to be typed, and original signatures are not actually required on this addendum. It's probably the only addendum with HUD that doesn't require original signatures. Okay, I'm going to bring in the presentation here. This should change your screen to my PowerPoint.
Hey, Wendy.
I'm on a call, Andrea. Okay. Let's see. From the beginning here on the slideshow. Okay, here we go. The general instructions, and again, this is going to change about everything you guys are doing as far as affecting with the earnest money especially. Now that this program's in effect, HUD no longer has a closing attorney in this state. Your buyer will choose their own closing attorney, and that attorney will need to acquire a title ID from HUD through the BSCA addendum. That addendum that I just showed you, it must be typed. If no title ID, you must have a copy of the this is the attorney's license and E&O insurance. The selling agent's going to verify the closing agent's name and address, verify that email address. That's really important. And that's the person that will be receiving the contract package. The closing agent's signature does not have to be original. Neither does the selling agent or the buyer. the closing agent must sign both addendums. That applies to PIMCO. PIMCO is going to have two separate addendums to sign. The second addendum is pretty much giving the closing agent instruction on what will be required of them, and they will need to sign that addendum as well. As far as I know, that does not need to be original signature either. But on the other two, on Ofori and Hometelos, it'll just be the one addendum, just that BSCA addendum. The BSCA cannot be an immediate family member, business associate, or financial interest of the buyer. You will need to now explain to the purchaser that they are now responsible for the closing attorney fee. Of course, that's unless they've asked for closing costs to be paid by HUD and in sufficient funds are on line 5 of that sales contract. HUD will pay if the sufficient funds are there. The BSCA addendums cannot be sent in advance. They must accompany the first sales contract that attorney's completing for HUD under the BSCA program. For PIMCO and Hometelos, I was hoping all three asset companies would do this the same way, but there's going to be a couple of differences between PIMCO and Hometelos is exact. There's hardly any changes in the way each one of them are handling this. Ofori is handling it a slight bit different. So I've had to break it down where with PIMCO and Hometelos, the earnest money, it's still got to be in certified funds. But for PIMCO and Hometelos, it needs to be made out to the closing attorney now. It doesn't need to be made out to HUD. It needs to be made out to the closing attorney of the buyer's choice. Line 3 of the sales contract where the earnest money is held, and line 9 where they're asking where the closing will be held, will now have that closing attorney's name. And it'll be the same. Line 3 and line 9 of the sales contract and the name on the earnest money check will now match for PIMCO and Hometelos. The earnest money check must be delivered to the listing agent within 48 hours of acceptance. So that's going to be different. That's something different that you haven't done before. You're going to actually be not include the earnest money check with the contract package. You'll include a copy of the earnest money check, but you'll actually hand deliver or FedEx the earnest money check to the listing agent. The selling agent is now responsible to send the contract package to PIMCO or Hometelos with a copy of the earnest money check. PIMCO and Hometelos must receive within 48 hours of acceptance. So that's still the same time frame. But within that same time frame, the selling agent must now deliver the following to the listing broker within that 48 hours of acceptance. And we need to get a copy of that BSCA addendum because we need to know who the closing attorney is. We need to get a copy of the first page of the contract, a copy of it. The original is going to the asset company. We need to get the actual certified earnest money check made payable to that closing agent. And of course, we know it'll either be either $500 or $1,000. If the purchase price is $50,000 or below, it needs to be $500. If the purchase price is $50,001 or over, then it's $1,000. PIMCO or Hometelos, whichever one, will not move forward with the contract until the earnest money is uploaded in their portal by the listing agent. So it's imperative as it is to get the contract to Hometelos or PIMCO within that 48 hours, the same importance needs to be put on getting the earnest money check and the first page of the contract and BSCA addendum to the listing agent. So you'll be wanting to contact that listing agent. The listing agent will be contacting you with instruction. It's going to be a lot more contact between the listing agent and the selling agent to get this all done in a timely manner. Keep in mind, because we don't want anything to slow down the process, all emails to the asset manager must have the case number in the subject line for the fastest response. Any cancellation fees are the buyer's expense. If a buyer changes attorneys, if in midstream your buyer needs to change attorneys for whatever reason, you will now need new earnest money. Even though the other earnest money has been sent in to the first attorney, that's a whole separate transaction. That attorney will be given instruction on how to get that earnest money either back to the selling agent or to HUD, whoever will be receiving that earnest money. But you'll have to come up with a whole new earnest money, new forms, and the buyer is actually responsible to reimburse that first closing attorney because they hired him. Closing is still expected within 45 days. If you're using the 203K rehab financing, you're still allowed the 60 days to close on that. If you have an extension, it's going to change a few things in the way that extensions are handled and who you send extension request forms to. If an extension is required, you need to send the following in 5 days prior to contract expiration to either PIMCO or Home Telos. You won't be sending it to the attorney like we have in the past. So you won't be sending it to the BSCA attorney. You'll be sending it to the asset company. And they do need that 5 days prior to the expiration date. With that, you'll need to send the extension fee in certified funds made payable to HUD, the extension request form, which can be found on the asset manager's websites, any supporting documents with the lender signature. That is the reason why you're having to get an extension. The current lender letter, because you remember, if you're going into an extension, this is over 30 days past your original lender letter, so you'll need a current lender letter or proof of funds dated within 10 days of this extension form. If approved, PIMCO or Home Telos will let you know if the extension fee can be waived. You know, there's some instances when HUD will waive the extension fee. That still applies, but you do have to have approval to do that, and you still have to meet that 5-day deadline. Send requests and supporting docs 5 days prior to extensions. If it's a PIMCO, it's extensions at pimco-limited.com, or if it's Home Telos, you will have a contact person at that time to send that to. Extension fees are forfeited if failure to close. Okay, that's for Home Telos and PIMCO. Now, OFORI is going to be slightly different. For OFORI, the earnest money must be in certified funds, but now it must be made out to the listing broker. Whoever the listing brokerage is, that's whose name needs to be on this certified earnest money check. Line 3 of the sales contract where the earnest money will be held, that line 3 of the contract, will now be the name of the listing broker because they're going to be holding the earnest money until right at closing. Line 9 of the sales contract, where the closing shall take place, will be the name of the closing attorney. So there's a slight difference there for the way OFORI handles this. We only have a 24-hour time frame here. Within 24 hours of contract acceptance, the selling agent is responsible to deliver the following to the listing broker. So the selling agent's going to actually be delivering the complete contract package with the addendums, including the BSCA addendum, the pre-qual or certification of funds, and again, the names must match the names on the contract exactly, the earnest money check in certified funds made out to the listing broker, and a FedEx or UPS prepaid overnight label. So that's within 24 hours. Then the listing agent, what we have to do, we have to look over the contract package, make sure all is correct, make sure the earnest money is the correct amount of money. We have to get all that together and send it in to OFORI with that prepaid overnight label where they receive it within 24 hours as well. And again, the BSCA cannot be an immediate family member, business associate, or financial interest of the buyer. So your time's a little bit limited on OFORI. To me, what I think I would do is when we do a HUD sales contract, we try to complete the entire contract package, the hard copy, before we even submit it online. I think when you see with the time limits that we're looking at now, that if you can do that ahead of time, it will really help you in meeting these timelines. I would try to have everything completely filled out, signatures ready to go, so that when you receive that acceptance, you just have to get that, what you have to deliver to the selling agent, and then if it's Home Telos or PIMCO, you can send off your package in plenty of time. If it's OFORI, you can make sure you get this to this listing agent within 24 hours, so the listing agent can be sure to also get it to OFORI within that entire 48-hour time period. Again, all emails to the asset manager must have the case number in the subject line for fastest response. Any cancellation fees are the buyer's expense. If the buyer changes attorneys, you will now need, again, you'll need the new earnest money, new forms. And the buyer is responsible to reimburse that first closing attorney if they change attorneys. Closing is expected within the 45 days, 60 days if they're using the rehab loan. Extensions, it's kind of the same thing 404. If an extension is required, you need to send in the following within 5 days prior to contract expiration, and you're sending it in to 04 to the asset manager. The extension fee and certified funds made payable to HUD, the extension request form, your supporting documents, and your current lender letter. If approved, FOIA will let you know if extension fee can be waived. Extension fees are forfeited if failure to close. Okay, moving on to the closing agents, just some of the main things that will be changing for the closing attorneys. And this may be something the selling agents really need to we may have to work with the attorneys for a while so they understand just how much has changed. Of course, they must have that title ID from HUD. This is obtained on that first closing under the BSCA program. If you've closed HUDs before with the HUD designated attorney, it doesn't count. It's going to be your first closing under this new program is when you have to get that title ID. You must complete part of the BSCA addendum and submit copies of your E&O insurance and your license to request that title ID from HUD. So when you're filling out that addendum for the first time, send with it a copy of your bar card or your a proof that you are licensed and a copy of your E&O insurance. Instructions for each asset company will be sent with the executed contract, and I'm sure there'll be slight changes per asset company, but you'll be getting a list of instructions when you get that contract package. You must be licensed and follow federal, state, and local laws for that state. You must have E&O insurance, at least $1 million per claim and $1 million aggregate. If your license or your insurance expires within 60 days of the contract, you must also submit evidence of a renewal date that you've sent in for a renewal. They are requiring that if your license expires within 60 days, because a lot of times these contracts, the property doesn't close within the 30 to 45 day time period. Sometimes it goes past 60, so HUD is needing to verify that you have submitted evidence that you have renewed, sent in a renewal for your insurance or your card, your renewal date for your license. The buyer select closing agent needs a separate title ID per office address. All emails to the asset manager, they ask that you please include the case number, the 461- number in the subject line. The closing agent, the closing attorney is now responsible to request any HOA, utility, liens, bills attached to prior mortgage, and other demands on the property. That's now going to be, it's going to be like almost like a regular closing. You're going to be responsible for getting all those together, for submitting all seller's fees, invoices, and supporting documents to the asset manager for approval no later than 10 days prior to close date. Really need to watch these dates because with HUD, when you're sending in that approval to the asset company, it's not the asset company that's signing, that's approving this. They have to send it on to whoever the contact at HUD is. HUD is actually going to be the one that approves these. So 10 days is needed to ensure that these are approved and payment is made within a timely manner. Do not assume payoff will automatically occur out of seller's proceeds without prior approval. Just everything, just remember prior approval. With HUD, prior approval is needed for any and all expenses. Bills and invoices need dates of service and a breakdown so the asset manager can determine who is responsible for payment. You got to remember these homes, they were an FHA loan that went through a foreclosure. So some of these invoices may not be applicable to HUD because it may have happened prior to foreclosure. Deed prep fees are always a buyer's expense. HUD will not reimburse for paid fees included but not limited to paid assessment letters or deed or transfer stamps. And again, the buyer select closing agent cannot be an immediate family member, business associate, or financial interest of the buyer. The attorney must submit the entire closing package to the asset manager within 5 days prior to close date. HUD still needs those 5 days. It includes the deed, the HUD 1, and they do say the HUD 1 must have that old case number, that's associated with the property, the previous HUD case number. Field 8 is an appropriate place for that. And if the buyer is going with FHA financing, they also ask that you put the new FHA case number if it applies. Supporting documents of all charges paid on the HUD. Address of the seller must read Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, 40 Marietta Street, Atlanta, Georgia, 30303. There's also PIMCO has a buyer select closing agent handbook. This has got great information on the rundown of what the closing attorneys are now responsible for. It gives a checklist also of what all is required with each closing, and the attorneys can request a copy of that at customer service ATL at pimco-limited.com. So that is a great resource as well. And I know there's probably not many attorneys on this call, but if the selling agents, if you want to send that information to your attorneys, it'll kind of help them in advance to see what is required of them. I'm going to leave my contact information up here for a minute. This is like I say, I'm just one of the listing brokers. There's multiple listing brokers in South Carolina, so whenever you're putting in an offer, that listing broker that you're working with will be able to help you as well. But here's my office number, cell number, and my email address. I was going to see if there's any questions here before I move on to anything else. And I do not see any questions yet. If you have any questions, if you'd like to put them in the box here, I'll be glad to try to take a look at them. At this time, I'd like to mention one other change that just occurred Monday with HUD. HUD has changed their listing period for the owner-occupant properties for the exclusive period. You know, on a property that was listed in insured or insured with escrow, that listing period was a 30-day exclusive owner-occupant listing period. That has now changed. You'll see new properties that are listing on HUD Home Store that listing period has now changed to a 15-day exclusive owner-occupant list period. So on day 16, the property will go into an extended listing period where investors, all bidders, can then bid on day 16. This is on insured and insured with escrow properties. On the uninsured properties that do not apply for FHA financing, the 203B financing, they are still on the 5-day exclusive period. Day 6 is extended to all bidders. On the new 15-day exclusive period, insured and insured with escrow, they still have the first 10 days as a sealed bidding period. All bids that come in on the first 10 days will be opened up on day 11. That's how it's been in the past as well. If a winning bid occurs, the property goes off the market. If there is no winning bid, the next 5 days, it would just be 5 days, because remember we're in a 15-day period now, would be exclusive daily owner-occupant bidding. Well, that's changed a little bit. What HUD has done now, starting this week, in that 15-day exclusive list period, when day 10 of the sealed bidding period falls on a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, or a government holiday, those weekend days or holiday will now be rolled in with the 10-day sealed bids. So it'll now include those holidays or the weekend days with it. Since the asset company does not look at the bids on weekends or on holidays, when they come in on Monday morning or the next business day, that's when they open up the bids. They will include the bids that come in until midnight the previous night. And this only applies to that 15-day bidding period under the exclusive owner-occupant period, when it's the 15-day list period and you have a 10-day sealed bidding period within that. So you do have an option to still bid if that listing period ends on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a government holiday. So that's a new change that we've never seen before. They are including those days in it now. If your buyer didn't get in on it in the 10 days, they still have an option if it falls on one of those days. Let's see if there's any questions. Let's see. Okay, during the owner-occupant bidding period, is it acceptable that one owner is occupant full-time and one is part-time? On the owner-occupant period, the person whose name is on the proof of funds or the pre-qual letter and is on lines 1 and 2 of the sales contract, if one of them is going to be owner-occupant, stay in the house for 12 months as their primary residence, then yes, that is fine, as long as one is. If the other one is just part-time, I would not put them down as an occupant. I would put them down as maybe if they're a co-borrower. I would put them on line 2 for how title is taken, but I wouldn't put them on line 1 or on the signature line down on line 13. I would just put the primary purchaser, whoever is going to live in the home for 12 months, on line 1 and line 13. Line 2, you could put the name as title will be taken under both people. Will they accept digital signatures on the form? Good question. From what I'm hearing so far, no. HUD will not accept digital signatures. It does have to be handwritten signatures on the BSCA addendum. It does not have to be original, but it cannot be digital as of yet. What if I represent a buyer that isn't local and they wire the earnest money funds to the closing attorney? Can I just get proof of the wire and add that to the contract paperwork? I do not believe you can do that. Like again, I'm kind of learning here too. This is kind of new for us. In the past, HUD hasn't allowed that. So what I would do, I would just plan on them sending in earnest money funds, proof of funds, with their signed contract package, so that you have it in advance, so that when they do have an offer accepted, then that earnest money will be in your hands and you can hand deliver it or overnight it to the listing broker. So I wouldn't, as far as I know, HUD is not accepting wires to the closing attorney. No. Okay, next question. Can we deliver the docs to the listing agent by email? No. Remember, we're going to need we're going to need the earnest money check, and we are going to need the original documents for Ofori to send that into Ofori for you. But on Home Telos and PIMCO, we're going to need that original earnest money check. We do need a copy of the first page of the contract and the BSCA addendum. So you're going to be hand delivering or mailing that check to us. So no, you could email the docs, but we would still need the check to be sent in, the original check sent to us within that 48-hour time frame. Next question. Can I get a copy of the slides to share with my closing attorneys? You can. What will be mostly helpful to them would be that BSCA handbook that PIMCO has. If anybody does want a copy of the slides, I can probably put this in a PDF and send it to you. My email address is showing, wendy@gibbsrealty.net. Just shoot me an email and I'll be glad to send it. I also have a couple of classes coming up. I'm going to get with Jessica and we're going to post, I think she's going to post them on the SCR site. I know we have a class in Columbia the 10th, which is I think next Tuesday. There in Columbia. If you're interested, just shoot me an email, or again, I think Jessica will be posting it on the SCR site. Okay, next question. What is that email address for the handbook again? Okay, let's see. Let me get this over here. I don't remember it by memory. It's customer service ATL. It stands for Atlanta, but just ATL at PEMCO, PEMCO dash limited, spelt out LIMITED.com. Okay, next question. If the attorney has been selected to be the assigned POA for the buyer, will that cause a conflict for them being the BSCA? I would say that it is. I really don't have authority to answer that question. If you want to send me an email with that question, I will forward it to the asset companies to see if they can get an answer from HUD. If you could email me that question, I'd greatly appreciate it, and I'll find out. But initially, I would say no, but again, I don't have the authority. I do not know for sure on that. My email is wendy@gibbsrealty.net. Next question. Let's see. Any more questions here? Let's see. Okay, that may be the last question. There again, if anybody has any questions after this, feel free to shoot me an email if you can. That would be the quickest way for me to be able to respond.
Hey Wendy, it actually looks like we've got a couple more questions here.
Okay, great.
I'll just relay them through the microphone. Uh,
Thank you.
let's see. Okay, earnest money is between $500 to $1,000. What is the price break between the two?
Okay, yeah, HUD will only accept earnest money in the amounts of $500 or $1,000. They won't accept $2,000. They won't accept $300. If the purchase price is $50,000 or less, then you'll be wanting to send in an earnest money check for $500. If the purchase price is $50,001 or more, then the earnest money should be $1,000.
Do they still reserve the right to extend owner occupant occupy listings?
Oh boy, I'm sure they do. A lot of things can happen where they could extend it in the owner occupant period. That's determined between HUD and the asset company. They're again going to HUD Home Store and just watching those dates, especially the date in the top left corner of HUD Home Store. That's your deadline. That's the time you have to get the offer in for before they look at the bids. But an owner occupant can still bid in all bidders, but I think the reason that from what I can tell from the listing broker's perspective, is they changed this from 30 days to 15 days because they're thinking they're giving owner occupants 15 days to submit an offer before they open it up for all bidders. I think the 30-day time period was a bit much, and I think it was just making the property stay on the market longer than what they needed to. So just keep an eye on HUD Home Store. That's going to be when these properties first come available, is on the HUDHomestore.com website. They go in the MLS within 24 hours of it listing on HUD Home Store, and any changes, everything feeds from HUD Home Store down. So the MLS may not be as up to date as HUD Home Store at any given point of time. So that's where you watch for it.
I think that's it, Wendy.
That's it. Okay. I just want to thank everybody for attending, and there again, we're here to help you through this process. It's a huge change, a lot of changes for you selling agents, and the more information you can get, the quickest as this change happens, it'll be easier for you. Thank you so much for attending.
And if anyone wants to watch a copy of this webinar, it will be posted probably sometime either later today or tomorrow. You could watch it if you go to screaltors.org/webinar, and you can watch copies of all of our archived webinars there. So, and it will also be available on our YouTube channel if you go to youtube.com/screaltors. Thank you.
Thank you.